Okay. We'll do that. Call to order the Austin City Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, June 13th, 2023. We have one item on the agenda tonight. Before we get to that, we need to approve the minutes from our last meeting on May 9th. Does anyone have any changes or correction to those minutes as written? If not, I need a motion and a second to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion from Commissioner Swenson and a second from Commissioner Norman to approve the minutes from the May 9th meeting as written. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. The minutes are approved as written. So we have an open public hearing tonight to consider a petition from the Muffler Center, 1204 Oakland Avenue West, for a variance to the city's 20-foot setback requirement. Holly?
Yes, I'm just gonna get through the minutes here. The property in question is owned by Meyer Properties and Holdings LLC. Mitchell Meyer is here in the audience. Again, the address is 1204 Oakland Avenue West in Austin. The property is zoned B2 Community Business District, and the current use is as a muffler center, retail commercial. The properties to the north are zoned R2 multifamily residential district. To the south is also commercial. To the east is commercial, and to the west is Westcott Field, which is a recreational property. The petitioner wishes to add again a 40 by 65 foot addition onto the existing muffler center. The proposed addition will expand the building to the north, where it will be set back 2.5 feet from the north property line. The north side of the property again abuts an R2 residential district. The petitioner is requesting a variance from our code 11.023, which requires a 20-foot setback in the rear and side yards that abut a residential district. In this case, it would be the rear yards. There is no setback requirement from the adjacent B2 commercial district to the east or property. The property in question is approximately 0.34 acres. With this proposed addition, the total lot coverage with structures would be approximately 30%. 80% lot coverage is the maximum allowed. The structures on the property being reviewed are the existing muffler center and a proposed addition. There is an existing shed which is going to be removed to do the addition if that is approved. The Planning Commission and City Council must decide if the request meets the statutory requirements for granting a variance. Number one, the variance is in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the zoning ordinance. 2, that the variance is consistent with our comprehensive plan. 3, that the proposal puts the property to use in a reasonable manner. 4, that there are unique circumstances to the property not created by the landowner. And 5, that the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality in which the property is situated. And then this would be a recommendation to our City Council Planning Commission. Again, you can either approve, deny, or approve with conditions.
Any questions from the commissioners?
Comments from surrounding businesses and residents?
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. There were some comments by the business owner to the east, the Dairy Queen owner. They are here if they want to make any statements about that. There were just some concerns about, from my recollection, it was secondhand from our staff, that there were concerns about some property lines or easements potentially, but they can give you more information about that if they wish to do so. There was also a phone call to our staff by one of the neighbors to the north. I believe it was this property where my cursor is hovering right now. I believe they are also here. 1207? Yep. Okay. Again, they can also add any information that they might have, but they just wanted to kind of know a little bit more about the project. And I did not get any objections from them. And then also this property to the northwest here just had some questions as well, but no objections. Just curiosity, I think. And those were the only comments we received. And again, 2 of the parties are here at the meeting.
I was unable to read the dimensions on the, the elevation drawing, when the PDF, when I try to blow it up, it gets too washed out. What's the height of the new building?
Give me just a second here, I can show you exactly what it comes out at.
I should note the limit in a B2 district is 5 stories.
Can I approach, sir?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this drawing isn't exactly to scale, but the front edge of the building in relationship to the existing, this building is 14 feet tall. This edge here will be approximately 18, depending on what it takes to get that slope, but no more than 20.
20
Mr. Meyer,
total or above that?
could you actually show, can you show them on my computer?
got it, sure.
Yeah, can you, here, I'll. So this side?
Correct, yep, so the new building will be a mono slope that you can see with a parapet wall that makes it clean and square, similar to the existing structure. It'll be approximately 8 feet taller, and again, the measurement that's there, I can't read it either, but if my memory serves me correctly, from the blueprint, it was no more than 8 feet taller than the existing structure.
Okay. So the dotted line, the angular line, is actually the roof line?
That's correct.
Okay. So the side walls, the end walls, and the front wall are actually just parapet?
Correct, just for aesthetics.
Okay, so the roof's gonna drain to the north.
Correct.
So that back wall of the building will be 2.5 feet
From the lot line.
from the next property. What's the drainage gonna be down that building from the roof?
Yep, so from the east lot line to the west, there'll be essentially a ditch cut between the property line and the backside of the building, as well as a gutter, downspout, eaves trough to channel the water, again, to the west side of the building, so to the direction of Westcott Field.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Nope, that's. Any other questions from the commissioners?
Can you go back to the blueprint drawing? So the top drawing there, that's going to be facing 12th, is that correct?
That's correct.
And then the bottom is going to be facing north?
South. So that'll be your view from Oakland Avenue.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yep.
So which one, the bottom one?
The bottom photo is the view from Oakland Avenue. That's looking at the existing shop with the addition behind it.
Okay,
And then the top photo is the view from the west or 12th Street, looking east at the addition and the end of the existing shop.
Okay.
so if I'm looking south from a residence, I'm gonna be just looking at a straight building?
So the answer is no. The residence on the corner on the west is, I think, 1209 if you go back to the GIS. So they have a garage that separates their lot as well as tree coverage. There's also a fence there that's already existing.
Actually, you know what, I have your site plan here.
And then 1207, which is the Gutierrez family, they're in the audience here. They also have tree cover and a fence in their backyard as well.
It's not your fence, it's the residence fence?
I can't say whose fence it is, I don't know that. It was just there.
Okay,
It appears as though it's on or probably on their side of the line, if I was gonna measure to it.
who maintains it right now?
I do from my side, they do from
Okay.
their side.
6-foot privacy or?
I mean, it's at my eye level, I'm not quite 6 foot.
Okay. Because, and correct me if, don't we typically require businesses to put some sort of coverage or fence in between a business and a residence when we're butting up? I was thinking with like the ambulance service, when they were looking at that property over by, for scooters, there was some
Yes, we would
screening.
recommend, if not require, some screening between the two properties.
Okay, and but we would have to make that a condition of the variance.
It could be, yes.
Okay. And what kind of material is the building gonna be made out of?
So it'll be wood and steel.
Okay. Is it gonna have the same aesthetic as your muffler center, or is it gonna be,
Yep, so the idea, if you haven't been past the Muffler Center recently, we've started to freshen the look of the outside, so it's two-tone steel, so black wainscot, black trim with white, and then a red and white lettered sign that's lit. The new building will have a continuation of that, so the wainscot will continue throughout the new building. Black on the bottom, black trim, black doors, with white up the top, black cap around the outside. And then it'll have the similar, I guess retro is the term I would use for the signage that we put on there to kind of maintain the old school look of the building. There'll be a sign similar to that above the doors that faces the west, that'll be lit as well.
Mitch, correct me if I'm wrong, from when I visited out there, before it was all a bunch of old trees and stuff, right? Because it's
Correct.
pretty much dirt.
Yep, so we took out a total of 9 trees.
Okay.
That were, really overgrown. In fact, so the neighbor house, the one that's owned by Carroll's, it's a rental, but those trees were actually grown into and through the fence and like under the foundation and into the side of their garage. So I kind of did them a favor. We removed the trees already and ground the stumps. And then the other trees that were basically right on would be the east property line that Dairy Queen and I share. The property line essentially went right through the center of the trees. Those were ash trees, and I think, I don't know for sure the species, but either way, dead standing. And I've got some photographs. They were 60 feet tall and they were just a hazard. In fact, it was pretty remarkable that they hadn't fallen or damaged something yet. So we went ahead and removed them just to avoid the headache of dealing with it later, regardless of how this meeting goes. But we
Say, before we go any farther, I need to have you come up to the podium. And then state your name and address, just for the record, so Lauren can get that.
Business address, my home address?
I don't think it matters.
Business is fine.
Mitchell Meyer, owner at the Muffler Center, Meyer Properties LLC. Address is 1204 Oakland Avenue West, Austin.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, we just record it, so
Yeah.
I'm glad you get a microphone right away.
Anything else?
Yeah, you mentioned lighting.
Yes, sir.
What, is there any other additional lighting going on the new part, the new building?
On the exterior?
Yeah.
So the proposed lighting, if you can picture the swan neck lighting that shines back against the building or against the sign. I'm not a huge fan of the ultra bright, like the wall pack security type lighting. We're
Right.
kind of going for a cleaner, softer type look on the building. Again, simply to illuminate the sign and a little bit of the driveway in front of the doors. As of now, that's the only proposed lighting that we have
Okay, so no
planned.
lighting in the back.
Oh, no, sir.
Okay.
No lighting, no windows, no doors, nothing on the north or east sides of the proposed building.
And we do have some limitations on the wattage in our ordinance as well.
Okay,
problem.
any other questions from the commissioners before I open up the public hearing? Anybody?
do we have the comprehensive plan? Do we have a copy of it, what it looks like? Not for you, I'm sorry, that's more for
mean the-
Ms. Wallace.
The future land use plan?
Yeah,
It shows
Does
that
it-
area as B2,
okay.
if I'm not mistaken.
I just
Did
know one of
not-
the
I did not include
considerations
that.
is we have to look at the comprehensive
It
plan. Okay,
is in compliance with the comprehensive plan, that property. It's already commercial, so. Okay, this is an open public hearing, so anybody else that's here that wants to speak or has any other questions? Is it the Gutierrez, am I saying that right? That live at 1207, do you guys have any other questions? Okay. Anybody else that's here that wants to address the commission?
Well, I just
Please
have
come up to the
a-
podium and state your name and your address, please.
Okay, I'm Kathleen Wines. I own the Dairy Queen. And you want the Dairy Queen's address?
Sure.
1200 West Oakland Avenue.
Thank you.
I don't mind that they add on. I just would like to know was it surveyed? And was it surveyed to know where the actual property line is?
Do we know that, Holly? Was it required to be resurveyed?
No. Well, actually, did you have it surveyed?
So I've got some documents here.
Yeah, for commercial, we generally do require a survey. But before the build, not necessarily for the planning commission.
Yeah.
Well-
If I might comment on
Sure.
that issue. This is a zoning question and a variance question. It is not a question that would change the legal obligations of any landowner to not encroach on neighbors. So it's incumbent upon the private owners to make sure that they are not crossing their own boundaries, but the city doesn't go in and establish those boundaries or survey those. That would be for the property owners to establish. And we get questions all the time about, is this fence built on my yard or what have you? And we can say, well, here's where you can find the description of your yard, and then a surveyor can come and tell you whether it's there, because it's not really our role to mediate those disputes between private folks. So in considering this issue, you should assume that the variance giving him leeway to go within certain distances of the boundary sets a distance from the actual boundary. And if he violates that, he's going to not only violate whatever you grant today, but probably get into trouble with neighbors. So it's incumbent upon the owner to make sure, if they're going to get a variance to go 2.5 feet from their boundary line, that they establish where that boundary line is and make sure that whatever they construct meets that. It's not really incumbent on us to hire a surveyor to go out and make sure that that happens.
Thank you.
So,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
so should I have it surveyed or how would I do that to make sure where the line is?
You can have it surveyed. You would just hire a private surveyor, someone who's certified. And they can verify where the property boundaries are.
Okay.
But like I said, we would also require that for commercial build as
Okay.
well. So it just depends on whether you,
Oh, he would have to do that, the muffler center?
yes.
Okay. I don't know, because.
Do you have a specific concern about the eastern boundary, or?
Well, no, not really necessarily. I don't really quite know where it is, but I do know where they had a fence there, a brown fence that came up, and the other muffler center, Sorensen's that owned it, it was considered that was their lot, but I guess I found out that I actually owned some in back of that fence. But now they tore it down, so I don't know
Oh, the GIS again,
exactly.
Holly?
Yeah, whoops. Okay, hit the wrong thing here. Okay, does this look familiar or does it look about right?
That's correct.
This is what the county has in its records.
Okay. Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, it looked like that fence might have been, that we owned a little bit of back of it, but I don't know because I haven't had it surveyed. So I really don't know. And at first they told me I couldn't have it surveyed. I was gonna do it after they bought it because I was concerned about where our building was on the side. They were parking the cars right up to the building.
Oh, here.
And, yeah, and then they told me I couldn't have it done because it was 2 lots. I had 2 lots at the time. You know, because I bought the other, we added on. But then now that it was put together, the lot was put all in one, they said we could get it surveyed. I just found that out, so,
Yeah, I mean, you can survey your property on your own whenever you want to. It's just a bit of a cost
yeah.
to have it
yeah.
done, so.
But I just wasn't quite sure. I know from when my husband bought land from Sorensen's when they had it, because when we added our hood on, when we remodeled, we had to buy land because it had to be so far away from the property. We had to buy like 8 or 10 feet.
Yeah, maybe for fire code
Yes.
issues. Okay.
Yes. So I didn't know if we owned 10 or 11 or 9 or what we actually owned, you know. I'm not even sure because my husband is the one who bought it from the Muffler Center guys.
Yeah, this just gives you kind of a, they have a disclaimer on here. The county does on their website, but it gives you a general idea of what their records show as far as the property boundaries are concerned.
Okay.
So those are documents that have been recorded with
My
their
experience
office.
with working with surveyors is that they go and find the deeds
Yeah.
where you acquired the land,
Okay.
and they use those deeds to establish where those boundaries are.
Oh, okay.
And they put markings, whether it's paint or flags or what have you, so that you can see where that is. So
Okay.
that would be something you could arrange with a private surveyor, and they would answer all of
okay.
these questions for you.
Okay. Yeah, and then I'm just concerned that it is close. I know we have a dumpster back there, so, I mean, I don't want it to hit their building, you know, when they come or the snowplow comes or whatever, you know. I don't think it's a problem, but, you know, I don't think it would be a problem, but he said he could put pavers there, but I don't know how he would put pavers there when he only owns 2.5 feet if he's gonna add on, you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Is the distance from the rear or butting the Dairy Queen, is that the same? Or is it going right up to the property line?
So if I understand correctly, commercial property, if it was explained to me and I understood it correctly, the setback to commercial property was 0. We aren't looking to do that. The
Yeah,
documents.
no, you don't need a variance for that, but
Right.
just wondering.
Yep, so we were gonna stay 1 foot off of the east line. Again, to avoid the headache or the hassle of surveying or something to that effect. I did get documents from an April Grabo, I don't know if that's how you say the last name,
Yep.
that had the measurements to within 1/100th of a foot. These documents here, I don't know if that matters, but so with a 100-foot tape measure and points of reference, I would agree with Kathy that the fence location that she referred to, her property does actually exceed beyond what the normal, or where Harold and his brother Sorensen originally thought their property was, even though they maintained it. I think it was technically Kathy's
Yeah.
property, which is a non-objection of mine. Our proposed plan is still to stay back 1 foot from the actual measured line per the documents that were given to me. Of course.
I got those too, but you know.
Yeah,
how
this
do
is
you know
again,
that's
this is
right?
not a legal survey,
No,
so
it's
you can't go
not.
by this.
No.
This is something that we just provide. This is actually just a screenshot of the GIS, the Mower County GIS.
Because I got that one too when I was down at the city.
Were you measuring from the property pins?
From the back side of the sidewalk on all sides is supposed to be the reference point.
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful to have a reference point. You'll get a, pretty good.
Are we talking like?
But if we're talking about a foot or 2.5 feet,
Yeah, that's pretty close.
yeah, that is very close. Have you talked to our building official about doing a survey at all?
I have not.
Okay.
Which building official is that?
Fred Huesmuller?
So the answer is briefly, then, if that's the case, yes, I have talked to Fred briefly about that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it would be required. One, because of the location, and two, we usually require surveys with commercial builds, not necessarily with residential. Do you have any other questions? I mean, that could be a condition to potentially.
Well, based on the city attorney's comments earlier, does it need to be a condition? I mean, we can approve or recommend the council to approve or disapprove based on what we have for information. And if something ends up to be not kosher with what's on the drawings, then that's a totally different matter.
Yeah, I mean, we would be inspecting it to make sure it is in the right place, but any error, whether it's on our part or their part, is gonna be their liability ultimately. So it would be in their interest to get a survey done.
Yeah, I think there's two issues. If there's one that's required as part of the building permit process that follows this, and that's outside the scope of this meeting, then one will be done as part of the building permit process. If one isn't required as part of the building permit process, I think prudent neighbors in this circumstance, if you're going to build within 1 foot of a line, you should know where the line is before you start building. And so I would highly recommend that one side or the other or both cooperate with getting a survey so we know where the line is before construction happens. But again, that's not something that you approve or disapprove, because you're approving that it has to be no closer than 2.5 feet from the side that needs the variance. The rest of it is up to the private owners to make sure that they don't encroach on their neighbors, because that'll get them sued. And that would be the result. It wouldn't be coming back here and complaining that it was built too close to the property line. It would be commencing a lawsuit, which may result in removal of the encroaching structure or compensation for having essentially taken somebody else's property. So I think everyone would really like to not see that happen.
No.
So however this works out tonight, if this project goes forward, I would recommend that you make sure that a survey tells you where your property lines are. Because it sounds like there's a fair amount of, maybe at one point there was a fence and maybe it was in the wrong place and maybe people thought it was here or there. And if you're gonna go within a foot, an error could put you in jeopardy. You know, that's close. If you're trying to be 10 feet away and ended up 9 feet away, that's not as big a problem as if you're trying to be 1 foot away and you're 3 inches on the wrong side.
And I don't know if Stephen Harold would actually know a little more, because they owned it before we did. We bought it in 1979. And then there was a house next door, because then we bought that house and tore it down.
Yeah, your best bet really is to just hire a certified surveyor to do the work, and
Okay.
we will then be,
Yeah, at one point in time, these were platted lots.
Yeah,
And so a plat has corners that the surveyor knows exactly where they're supposed to be, regardless of where the street is or the sidewalk is or
Okay.
anything else. And so that's what the surveyor will come in and do, is say, all
Okay.
right, the way this was originally lined up, it looked like this. And then, of course, you own these pieces because you bought the house or you bought the extra lot.
yeah,
And so I think it would be very helpful. And however the two of you work that out,
okay.
I think it would be good for you.
so the answer then is no, we don't have to have that as a condition.
Right. So are the commissioners clear on what we're deciding? What we're not deciding, right? Okay.
Yeah, so it would go 2.5 feet from the line, right? From my line,
They said they thought approximately 1 foot.
1 foot.
On the east wall. Right. The back wall is 2.5 feet from the other properties.
But that's really not in question here, because it's allowed to be right up to the property line.
Okay,
So the distance between the two commercial properties isn't really an issue from a zoning perspective. It's just the distance from the two homes to the north.
Because it's residential.
Residential district, we're required to have a 20-foot setback. And then I also did look up our future land use map, and it showed that half of the block to the north is still zoned high-density residential. And then to the south is commercial,
So basically as it is right now.
basically as it is, yeah.
Thank you.
So then I should get it surveyed first and make sure, how would that work?
Well, it depends on how you feel about it. I mean, I think
The
that
only
we
thing that worries me is we got our dumpsters back there, and,
probably wouldn't make sense for both of you to survey it unless you're
Okay.
kind of wondering where your property boundaries are, other than what abuts the neighbor
Yeah.
to the west. So if you're wondering your whole property boundary, then you should have it surveyed as well.
okay.
Because then you'll know your northern property boundary as well,
Mm-hmm,
where that apartment is.
okay,
And also, I guess your parking lot or
mm-hmm,
the area to the, yeah, it might be to your benefit too. Yeah, just to have
Okay.
it surveyed.
okay. I could do that, yes. Okay. But I mean, so it's a foot, not 2.5, because he told me 2.5, but it's,
2.5 to the north,
oh,
1 foot between your properties.
okay. So he could not put like hostas there and a paver, because that would be really coming into my lot.
Yeah, I mean, 12 inches is not a lot,
Yeah,
really. But I mean, you could put something in there, but it would be hard to maintain from their side potentially.
yeah.
But
But our dumpsters are there, so I mean, I don't think it really would be any sense to put anything there, to tell you the truth.
okay,
You know,
something that
that's
you
the
can
way I'm
hopefully
kind of
work
seeing.
together on.
Or I could put more, blacktop going back there or something, so we don't have any maintenance.
Yeah, you probably have some good ideas that you can discuss.
But it's actually gonna be a foot away, not 2.5.
Correct.
Oh,
Correct.
okay. I didn't know that.
It could technically go right up to the property line.
Okay. I guess when we built, or when we added on and put that, hood in where our grill area is, it must have been different,
Well, I'm guessing, so I understand what our building code would require some additional, fire code requirements because of the distance from the property line.
okay.
So there are different materials that are required depending on
Okay.
how close to the property line a
Mhm.
building is. So maybe your existing building, maybe rather than having to renovate or add something for fire protection, maybe it just was easier to add some extra space between the properties.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. I really don't know.
Yeah, I don't know
completely
what,
speculating.
I think they said, because we put a new hood in, it wasn't grandfathered in, and we had to buy more land over on the muffler center side.
Oh, okay. So
And
when you
then-
added something new, you would have brought it up to
Yes,
Code?
that's what we
Okay.
did,
okay.
yeah.
Did you have anything further for the
I
commissioners?
think that's all I had a concern about. Angie, did you think of anything else? I don't think so. I don't know. But, okay, yeah, that would be all I'm concerned, I guess, that we'll get it surveyed
Okay,
to make sure. Okay.
thank you. Thank you, we appreciate that. We appreciate all the people that came and provided comments. It always makes our job a little easier to hear from the people that are involved. Does anyone else in the public have anything else they want to add? Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I'd like to just add, Paul Fisher, that I think something like this for the community is wonderful. You have an existing business that wants to grow, wants to make the neighborhood look better, will make the Dairy Queen look better, improve the tax base, more employees, more spending in the community. I think this is a real positive thing on the Meyer Brothers' part to do.
Thank you.
Hey,
Anyone else?
you should probably. Oh, you did?
Yeah, I
Okay, I'm
did.
sorry, I missed that.
All right, any other questions or comments from the commissioners before we move on? Anybody? Okay, this is a recommendation to council, so I need a motion and a second, either to recommend to council to approve recommend to council to disapprove or to approve with conditions.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation as presented to council.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Norman and a second from Commissioner Lindberg to recommend to council to approve the request for the variance as presented. Is there any further discussion?
I think before we vote, we should go through the conditions. I think, as listed in the minutes, I think given that the variance request is in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the zoning ordinance, I think it's currently B2, sounds like the land future planning, or future land planning. It will continue to be that way. The materials will be consistent with what it currently is. I think the proposal puts the property to a use in a reasonable manner. I think right now it's a business, you're expanding the business. You've always went next to the neighbors. We don't have any complaints from the neighbors as you being a bad business neighbor. I think at that point, and the variance if granted will not alter the essential character of the locality in which the property is situated. I think that's true in this case as well. So I think we should make a record of that. In my mind, they met each one of those conditions, and so I would vote aye.
Okay, so are you recommending to Commissioner Norman that she amend her motion to include the conditions 1 through 5 as stated?
Yes.
What he said. All
Commissioner
right,
Norman,
yes.
are you willing to
Yep,
amend
so-
your motion?
So I'll amend my motion to recommend it with the 5 variances that are listed below to council. So I'll
Okay,
make that
thank you.
recommendation.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Norman and a second from Commissioner Lindberg to recommend to council to approve the variance as requested, including conditions 1 through 5 as stated on the staff report. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously. Anything else for us?
No, I just would let the petitioners know that the final decision will be made next Monday at our city council meeting. Or Tuesday, yeah, thank you. Right, Monday's a holiday, so it will be moved to Tuesday at 5:30.
We can attend that as well if we choose.
Yeah, it's not a public meeting, it's just a motion for council. The planning commission's recommendations are taken very seriously but they may have additional questions, so if you're there, that could be helpful.
Sure.
To clarify, it's a public meeting in that it's open to the public to attend and observe. This item on the agenda will not be a public hearing where public input comments will be, asked for or invited, because that took place here.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, the council will get a report that talks about what was discussed and what the vote was, and then they'll consider whether they agree or not.
Sure.
I have nothing else.
You have nothing else? I have one more item then. With regards to that, we have in the past made recommendation to council. Our meetings always involve an open public hearing. We're required to take public comment. And then our recommendation to council goes to council, and then it ends up on the agenda not as an open public hearing. In the past, I don't know when it changed, but in the past, we've always advised citizens that came that, okay, now you need to do this all again. You need to go to the council meeting and make your voices heard again. And then council considers it. In the last couple of years, under the new mayor, somehow that has changed, so those items are no longer open public hearings. In the case of, for example, the rezoning of the property that ended up to house the Scooters coffee business, the citizens that were here that drove our decision showed up at the council meeting and were not allowed to speak because they were told it's not an open public hearing on the agenda. So my first question is, the procedure or the policy of being an open hearing, that means that if it is an open public hearing, then the mayor, as the chair of the council and the leader of the meeting, is required to take public comment on that issue. But the fact that it's not an open public hearing doesn't mean he's not allowed to take public comment. The mayor always has the authority to take public comment, correct?
Right.
And mayors in the past always have. I myself have been called to the podium by the mayor to comment on issues when we've rezoned in the past, and they were not open public hearings. So why has that changed, and how do we change the city code so that when we make a recommendation,
give a little
it has to
background
be an
quick?
open public hearing again?
So when we were updating our zoning code, our consultant said, why do you do 2 public hearings? So you have to send out notices to everybody twice. There's a lot of extra time
Because
involved.
we're not an elected body.
The state
we're a bunch of
statute does
volunteers.
not require it. The reason that we have a planning commission is so that the city council doesn't have to do that process twice.
Right,
Or
we
so it
do
doesn't have
the
to
heavy
do it.
lifting, but the citizens still have the right to address their elected public officials in public on those issues, and they don't have that anymore.
Right, what state law
They
is
can
all-
address us, but we're not their elected public officials. They didn't elect us.
What state law has always required is one open public hearing to take the comments from the public. And if that takes place here, that satisfies that requirement. The requirement that the council take a look at variances is because they've established a public policy represented in the ordinance, and you are granting permission to someone to essentially violate that. And so the council has one last look at it, because essentially what happens here tonight is going to give permission to people to do something that's contrary to the general rules that have been established. So the council's consideration has always legally been to just allow the elected folks who establish the rules to take a look at when we're bending the rules, why we're bending the rules, and whether they agree that the rule ought to be bent in that circumstance. If they disagree, they have a lot of options. They can take additional testimony that night, they can send it back to us and say, Planning Commission, I'm not quite sure you got this right. Or they can just unilaterally say no and overrule your decision. What we did historically was a local ordinance that provided for multiple, or at least some language that suggested that we could have multiple public hearings. One here, one at the council. And so practice during that time was to have 2 public hearings, to do all the notices, allow all the people to speak, to invite people to speak at both hearings. And when we redid the ordinance, everyone took a look at the fact that statute requires 1 hearing. Council doesn't necessarily want to always bog itself down, because many of these are non-controversial. They just go through, they accept your recommendation, and they're happy with it. And so we took away the mandatory public hearing at the council level, leaving the public hearing here on the idea that you folks are the ones that spend more time looking at zoning things than the council does. And so you should hear the public commentary, and they should just consider it because the statute makes them take a look at it when it's a bending of their rule. So it is a change in practice, but it's not really a change in practice that's brought about by any personality or any sort of backstory. It's just simply our local ordinance provided more than the statute had. When we revised the local ordinance, we made a change to try to streamline these processes and not take so much time and burden at in 2 meetings to cover the same ground. As a maybe added benefit of that, some of your recommendations were ultimately overruled by the council because political pressure was brought to bear by people powerful in the community, or whose voices maybe are louder than others. And in some ways, by taking it out of that that political sphere and keeping it here, there's less of that influence that's possible, and maybe actually the rules get applied more uniformly. It's one way to look at it. It certainly is not to say that the public shouldn't have a say. They're just encouraged to have the say here. And this recording and the minutes and the report of what happened here is provided to the council so they're aware of it. Whether that satisfies you or not, that's the best
No, it
answer.
doesn't. So the mayor does or doesn't have the option of taking public comment when that issue, when
On
this gets
every
to
issue
council.
that's on the council's agenda, the council has the ability to invite comment. When I tell someone, though, what's on the agenda, it's important for me to say it's not on the agenda as a public hearing so that they don't have expectations that they're entitled to be heard. So if the council wants to hear from the public, they can absolutely invite public comment.
Even
not
if there wasn't another public
Yes, it's not
notice.
they're able to say, now let's take some comments from the audience. They have done that on other issues, non-zoning issues recently, where there was not a requirement to take public input, but there were a lot of people in the audience, and the council said, these people are here, we should respect their time that they came here, and we should hear them out. But that's optional, and that's a council decision. They can overrule the mayor, because he makes the first decision. Am I gonna let people come to the podium, because the chair of the meeting recognizes who's at the podium. If he doesn't want to recognize people at the podium, then the council can then overrule him by voting by majority to say, no, we would like to hear these people. And that also has happened. But again, the question is what's mandatory and what's optional. The mandatory open public meeting is here. The notices that go to the neighbors to tell them to come and say their piece is here. They're encouraged to go to the council to see what happens, to see how their politicians, treat their concerns. And if the council wants to take input, they can. It's just not a scheduled public hearing.
Okay.
Splitting some hairs. I know.
Okay, anybody else have anything? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Burrows and a second from Commissioner Norman to adjourn. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. We are adjourned.